Hello, I'm Charles Coves, Australasia's passion provocateur. Welcome to this week's episode of the Charles Coves Show. Whether you're watching on YouTube or listening via podcast. In this week's episode, I explore your fears. I explore my fears and how to handle them and how to get rid of them in some circumstances, particularly when they're useless fears. And many of them are useless. Living with useless fears is like having an anchor on your boat out while you are trying to sail, or swimming in the ocean and dragging a bucket behind you, which I've done in training, which is a very hard way to swim, or running a marathon with a backpack full of bricks. That's what dragging these useless fears around is like. Don't live your life this way. I explore 7 very common fears and I explore 5 practical ways to handle them or eliminate them. Stick around. I'm sure you will find this episode of the show to be most useful and relevant. For regular viewers and listeners, we have changed the format of the show so that you can get to the unique content more rapidly. The foundational principles of this show and my background are now located at the end of each week's unique content. So, what's happened in the past week of note in the planet, in the world, in my life? Well, I continue to have 17 hours a week of global meetings with various groups pushing against, exploring strategies to push against a government overreach that takes away your freedom of speech, your freedom of movement, your freedoms generally, where governments are trying to take away your inalienable rights. And I do want you to understand that you do have inalienable rights. Because governments take certain actions does not mean they have the power to do so. But if you concede that power to governments, then they do have that power. I'm involved heavily with the World Council for Health, with Doctors for COVID Ethics. We are working on strategies to push back against the attacks on human freedoms. During the week, we've been exploring in great depth the World Health Organization proposed global treaty that would enable the WHO to declare a pandemic on any grounds it wants to and then claim sovereignty over Australia, over every country in handling the response to a pandemic. If you want to give such power to the WHO, I say you are sadly misinformed, so become informed. The WHO is not to be trusted. We continue to see the information spread about the Russia-Ukraine situation. And I again say to you, if you're getting your information only from the mainstream media about what's happening in the Ukraine and between Russia and Ukraine, you are sadly misinformed. The Treasurer of Australia, Josh Frydenberg, is boasting about how wonderful Australia's economy is. I say that is a lie. I say there are vast numbers of people underemployed, whose lives have been decimated by government action in this country over the last 2 years. And these politicians come out and say how wonderful the economy is doing. Lies, lies, lies. Yesterday, we had the South Australian election. That was a Saturday, March the 19th. And the Conservative Party, the Liberals, who don't behave conservatively in many ways at all, was roundly defeated. And it deserves to be defeated. This Steve Marshall, the Premier, has so been unliberal-like, unconservative. He's a progressive, woke character. And the South Australian government action on COVID was, in my view, incompetent, outrageous, improper. And I'm glad that Steve Marshall's government has been voted out. Now, I'm not saying that putting Labor in is a great idea, but I am in favour of punishing governments that are acting unconstitutionally and contrary to humanity's best interest and to the freedom of each person in South Australia, each person in Australia, and you, dear viewer, dear listener. And while all that's going on, while I'm working hard, I am enjoying life. Julie's enjoying life. We're enjoying life together. My exercise regimes continue. I'm fit and well and healthy. So while I'm fighting this fight for freedom, I also understand the need to look after myself mentally, physically, and spiritually. I hope your week was okay, and I hope you, from this show, that you are taking a broader interest in the issues that you are interested in, and don't just follow the mainstream media, because there is very little truth being published in the mainstream media, and even on weather events, even on, gosh, it's hard to know what you can rely upon in the mainstream media. It has been corrupted. And there is clear evidence that governments around the world have paid big dollars to the mainstream media for advertising, and that has ensured that mainstream media does not go against government narrative in most instances. So, on to today's big idea. How to handle and remove your useless fears. Living with them is a great burden. You have many fears, but do you know you're only born with two of them? Fear of loud noises, fear of falling. All your other fears have been learnt by you, have been imposed upon you by your parents. So from all these new learned fears, which of your fears are useful? And which ones are anchors on your progress, on your ability to live life on your desired terms? Which of your fears are so burdensome that they stop you becoming who you're capable of becoming, of achieving what you want to achieve, deep in your heart, deep in your soul? From my extensive coaching work with individuals and working with teams over the last 28 years, I have found 7 pretty common useless fears. Number 1, speaking up and expressing what's true for you. The pressure of groupthink stops us from speaking our truth. We want to be approved, and if we speak our truth, then people might not approve of us. And yet, from earlier episodes of this show, you know that you're a weirdo, and the truth that you want to express is important and valuable, particularly if you are comprehensively informed about the relevant topic. If you don't speak your truth, people never realise what a genius you are. They might realise what a fool you are, but they'll never realise what a genius you are. Number 2, the fear of asking for help. Nobody does it alone. And many people are scared of asking for help because it might suggest that they're not perfect. Number 3, the fear of rejection. The fear of doing something that might cause others to reject you, particularly in a sales, promotional, marketing environment. I overcome my fear of rejection doing this show. I am facing rejection regularly. People send me notes and say, I disagree with that. Please unsubscribe me. How could you have such a view about these jabs? You know what? I've been rejected. I'm still here. When you're rejected, you'll still be there. The 4th common fear, being alone. People stay in relationships, be it marriage, be it formerly loving relationships, friendships, because they're scared of being alone, because they're scared of not finding another partner, and they put themselves through hell, they put up with hell because they have this fear of being alone. Fear number 5, being exposed as less than perfect. Many senior executives walk around pretending to know all the answers because they don't want anyone to think that they're not perfect. Everyone knows they're not perfect, but what happens is we put on this act of pretending to know more than we do, and then we have this fear of being found out. And that fear then leads to some psychopathic, sociopathic behaviors, so that anybody who questions that you're not perfect, that then leads to attacks on those persons. Fear number 6, fear of losing your job. Many people put up with crappy, lousy jobs for this illusion of security, for this illusion of safety. Oh, at least I've got a job. And then they trap themselves in a soul-destroying environment for the illusion of security, because they think they can't find some other way to generate life support. There are many ways, so many ways, remarkable stories of taking the risk and getting rid of that fear and going, why am I putting up, like the characters in the Dilbert cartoon strips that I love, why am I putting up with this cubicle-like, rat-like environment? Fear number 7, the fear of making mistakes. That fear can so anchor us down into our existing way of behaving that we don't do anything new. Because, of course, inherent in anything new, learning any new skill, is mistake making. And so many people have deep subconscious pain around this issue of mistakes. They would never admit to making mistakes. They live their lives to avoid making mistakes. And in a changing world, that is a losing strategy. That is such a debilitating fear. So, how do we handle these common fears, many of which are useless, together with other fears that I might not have covered in those first 7, which, in the interest of time, I can't cover all of them? Number 1, identify the beliefs that lie behind your fears. For example, the fear of rejection, the belief that lies deep behind that, I explore in my book, Passionate People Produce, that fear of rejection comes right from your early days of being born. That if your mother or father rejected you, you would die. And that's deep in your subconscious. And so today, as an adult, if somebody rejects you, you have this subconscious belief that goes, gosh, if someone rejects me, I might die. It's not true, but you need to understand that behind many of these fears lie these strange beliefs, so you need to identify them. Number 2, strategy to handle and eliminate. Learn systems for changing your beliefs. You can change beliefs. It's a wonderful process to change beliefs. And if you change a core belief, then what was a fear once before disappears. The fear disappears. Now, that's a whole exercise in how do you change beliefs, and coaching is a very valuable way of doing that, because identifying and changing can take a bit of work, but you are quite capable of doing it yourself if you spend the time in doing so. But at the heart of many of your useless fears lie some strange beliefs. Number 3 strategy, unpack your fears. In other words, what you're fearful of, for example, being alone, unpack that. Go down the rabbit hole and imagine what life would be like if you were living alone. Well, what would truly happen, and imagine the absolute worst thing that could happen. When you unpack that fear and immerse yourself into the worst thing that could happen, you start to realize that you would actually cope. Just like I can cope because I'm drinking coffee while I'm doing this show, my addiction to coffee. Mwah. Unpack your fears. Go down the rabbit hole. Experience the worst thing that could happen. The 4th way to handle and eliminate your fears is to be passionate. This show is all about passion. When you are passionate, you are coming from your soul, your spirit, your heart. That's the source of your courage. When you are passionate about pursuing a particular endeavour, then the fears which come from your mind can be easily overcome. Passion is the source of your courage, and courage is needed when we have fears. And when you're passionate about fighting government overreach, then you go, I don't care about those fears. I can access the courage to overcome those fears. That's why passion, one of the crucial reasons why passion is so important. Number 5 strategy, the fifth and final. There are others, but these are the 5 big ones. Create a new philosophy about what your life is about. I've explored philosophy. Philosophy is a wonderful, wonderful topic. It's all about the question of what is your life about? What is your philosophy? What's good for you? What's bad for you? And you can create a new philosophy. The tragedy I see is that most people in the Western world would give away their freedom for security. That's a philosophy. So just keep me safe. Well, you go back deep in your belief system and say, hey, have I adopted these nonsensical ideas from my parents, from school, from government, that the good life is the safe, secure life? That's a philosophical question. I say freedom is much more important than security. This illusion of security, because in truth, there is no security. The greatest security lies within you. And so when you create this new philosophy, when you identify that you haven't had a previous philosophy about your life, or that the previous philosophy, you are giving away your amazing capabilities, your true genius, then you can create a new philosophy where these fears do not slow you down, do not drag you down, do not make your life a constant, difficult burden, like running a marathon with a backpack on your back full of bricks. Rethink the way that you play the game of life. Eliminate useless fears, handle them. Don't let these useless fears dominate your decision making, dominate your life. So, what tools can I now give you to reinforce this message? Well, I want to give you a spiritual tip. A spiritual tip, and this relates to this fearless behavior. And one of the tips for fearless behavior is to say sorry. Find someone to whom you owe an apology. And we often don't give apologies because we're fearful of what the person might say. Who do you need to say sorry to? My song this week is by Elton John. Sorry seems to be the hardest word. It's sad, so sad. It's a sad, sad situation, and it's getting more and more absurd. It's sad, so sad. Why can't we talk it over? Oh, it seems to me that sorry seems to be the hardest word. Think back in your life to when you have said sorry. How did you feel afterwards? It's an unburdening. It's a lightness of being, like that movie, The Incredible Lightness of Being. My health tip: go and get tested for what's missing in your physical body. Is it vitamin C? Is it vitamin D? Is it zinc? Is it magnesium? Is it potassium? Is it other trace elements, minerals? Getting tested might find some tiny element that, gosh, that's why my body is not functioning. That's why my energy levels are down, because I'm missing a trace mineral, a trace vitamin, a trace element. There are some wonderful ways that you can get tested. If you need some clues, send us an email. My book this week is by Miguel Ruiz Jr., The Mastery of Self. The Mastery of Self. And on the back, the author says, this book is a masterclass on how to release false ideas about your reality. My quote, time to go back. I've been talking about philosophy. Let's go back to Marcus Aurelius. It's a bit of a longer quote, so I'm going to read it. But Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, he says, yes, getting your wish would have been so nice, but isn't that exactly why pleasure trips us up? Instead, see if these things might be even nicer. A great soul, freedom, honesty, kindness, saintliness. For there is nothing so pleasing as wisdom itself, when you consider how sure-footed and effortless the works of understanding and knowledge are. And today's show is about understanding your fears, understanding where they come from, and knowing how to eliminate them or how to reduce their influence in your decision making. Now, it's time for a spot of humour. And of course, one of the fears that I didn't mention was the fear of death. So I thought, I need a spot of humour, Julie, about death. So, here it is. A condemned spy was being led out at dawn to the wall against which he was to be shot at sunrise. It was raining with ferocious intensity. On either side of him was a line of soldiers, and to one of them the condemned spy said bitterly, "What beast you are all to march me out to be shot in rain like this?" And the soldier replied with equal bitterness, "What are you complaining about? We've got to march back." Oh dear, some jokes about death, imagine that. Well, maybe life is a joke, because at the end of it we're all going to die, aren't we? Unless there's reincarnation. So I'm confident that if you think about today's big idea, you will find ways in which you can make a massive difference to your life. A life that I believe is meant to be all that you are capable of making it. My aim for this show is to provoke you and inspire you and motivate you to live your life on your terms by following and pursuing your passion and identifying it in the first place. I invite you to subscribe to the YouTube channel, to this podcast, to sign up for Passion Points to Ponder on covest.com and charlescovest.com, to get hold of the Manifesto for Self-Awareness and Passion on the charlescovest.com website. Visit that website also to find out more about the quest, and visit covest.com for corporate programs and public programs. There's a ton of resources available on both of those websites. You can also access my books, Passionate People Produce and Passionate Performance, on those sites. If you are new to the show, stick around for the next part, where I discuss my background and the foundational principles for this show. Again, thanks for watching or listening. And until our next show, may your week be full of the pursuit of your passion, of identifying your passion, full of challenge, of moment by moment enjoyment, and an embracing by you of all of the elements of your life in a way, in a fearless way, that enables you to each moment appreciate this gift of life that we have. Thanks for being with us. Have a great week. See you next week. And now, for viewers and listeners who want to know more about my background and what else I do with my life, as well as the foundational principles of the show, here we are. Since 1993, when I left my legal career, a career that I love, to become Australasia's passion provocateur, I have inspired and provoked and educated and motivated people all over the world to discover and pursue their passion. I have helped people via the books that I've written, via speeches at conferences, via in-depth team building programs, workshops over 1, 2 or 3 days, or over 3 months, 6 months. And I've coached people of all ages, one-on-one, from small, medium and large enterprises, government enterprises, helping them to identify the often tiny changes that can make a massive difference. One of my core principles is that freedom is what makes us truly human. That's why one of the greatest threats that government imposes on you to force you to observe its laws is the threat of imprisonment, the loss of your freedom. Just think about that. Government says if you don't behave yourself, we're going to put you in jail. No, I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to lose my freedom. That's a reminder to you of why freedom is so important. Without freedom, you and I are not much different to animals. If you were locked up in a cage for the rest of your life, how different would you be to an animal? This commitment to fighting for freedoms for all people is carried out by me primarily through 5 channels. Number 1, preserving the freedom to pursue your passion. Number 2, inspiring you to be able to be free through excellent health. Number 3, helping preserve freedom throughout the world through the expansion of industrial hemp, a magnificent agricultural crop, an almost miraculous crop that enables every community to thrive independently of government. In this way, the power of government to take away freedom is minimized. Number 4, fighting for freedom through legal strategies. So I do work as a legal strategy consultant, as an interface between clients and their lawyers. And number 5, as chairman of the Australian Institute of Comedy and as a board member of the Australian Cartoon Museum, fighting for the freedom of thought and speech through uncensored comedy and humour, through avoiding political correctness in the comedic space. When you block freedom of speech, freedom of thought, that's the beginning of the end of your freedoms. The foundational principles for the Charles Kovess Show are founded on the formula SA plus P equals S. Your self-awareness added to your passion will guarantee that you are successful. And the best definition of success I have found in life is that success is the progressive realization of your worthy ideals. The progressive realization of your worthy ideals. This show is also guided by Socrates' famous principle and quote, "The unexamined life is not worth living." You can see I'm wearing my red jacket. I wear my red jacket for all my shows. Red is the colour of passion, so that when you see me on the YouTube version, it reminds you that when you see red in your life, you ask yourself the question, am I pursuing my passion? What am I passionate about? Am I still passionate about that? What might I newly be passionate about? Each week I explore one big idea that can change your life. And it's just one big idea because there's a chance you will remember it. If I give you too many ideas, then we get confused and we don't do anything. Clarity leads to power. Confusion kills passion. Each week I share simple and practical resources that you've heard me describe in the earlier part of the show. A spiritual tip, a health tip, lyrics of a song, a book, a quote, and of course humour. This show is not politically correct. I have no intention of being politically correct. And I love certain addictions, including my addiction to great coffee, my addiction to exercise, my addiction to reading, and my addiction to certain other unmentionable in public type behaviours. Who would know what they are? This show definitely subscribes to the view that we have a spiritual life. So if you don't like discussion of spirituality, this show is not for you. I promise you that I don't include anything in this show that I don't consider to be true and that I have not found to be useful in the work that I've done over the past 28 years, but also over the past 50 years in business, as a lawyer, as a consultant advisor. I only want to share stuff with you that is of value to you. Finally, if you have any questions or suggestions, please feel free to contact me at charles@covest.com. Again, thanks for watching and listening to my show. Bye.